some of these things, maybe Bill and Shirley and Carolyn can fact check later. I'm kind of getting some of the second hand. But I just want to say that Ardeth Bratcher lived an extraordinary life. I want to give you some examples of why I think that. She grew up in a large family of 8 children, and there was a lot of love. It was difficult to stand out in that type of crowd. You had the love and support of parents, excuse me, and brothers and sisters, but you were expected to pull your own weight. You forged your own identity. I remember when I first started dating Denise, I went to her grandparents' house a couple of times, and this is where I don't know the whole genealogy or of how many of you are home at one time. So, but even still, I went to her grandparents' house. I would count the brothers and sisters. I'd count the people there. I'd look at the square footage of the house. I'd check the number of bedrooms. And despite all that, it just never added up. You know, something was amiss. It was a little bit of a problem. And especially even that, the one thing that was always, her grandmother would always say she had a one-bed kitchen. So it was a pretty small kitchen besides. There was no extra room in there. And if that crowd wasn't enough, or if that crowd wasn't enough to grow up with and contend with, Ardeth contracted encephalitis when she was a youngster. And they predicted she'd never live past high school. So next month she would have been 92, so the doctors missed that just a little bit. Just a little bit. And so it seems that from an early age, she was going to be a fighter, okay, in several areas of her life. When the girls were young, they took camping vacations all over the country. As many of you know, Ardeth worked at Illinois Power. She didn't have weeks and weeks as much vacation as James did. But she had a pretty simple solution to that, to solve that problem. She'd resign, just so she could go on vacation with her family. And so, obviously, she must have been a pretty good employee because they would hire her back at Illinois Power every time she came back. She did that multiple times. Something tells me the HR departments today would have not been favored of that. But apparently, she was a pioneer in that area. She was a pioneer in another area at work as well. We were looking at some pictures recently, and one of them was an artist retirement party from Illinois Power. And I said to Denise, I said, what are all these pictures? I mean, pictures and presents and food and everything. And she said they had so many presents at work that they had to call James with another vehicle to kind of have to get all the presents home. Oh, by the way, Illinois Power changed their retirement parties after that. So she was, they apparently pushed the boundaries too far with Ardeth. Okay. So with 8 children, definitely came from humble beginnings, and they lived a fairly low-key lifestyle. But when it came to travel, they were champions. James was in the Navy. He wanted to take Ardeth to a lot of places he'd been to when he was deployed from the Navy. And so that's what they did. A few years ago, this quilt over here, Don took some old t-shirts and that made this quilt in a lot of places they've been to. And it's just, and that's not all of it. Even when you look at the quilt, I mean, Brazil, Puerto Rico, Cancun, Aruba, China, Italy. So, they were fairly well traveled. And Ardeth liked to do the research prior to going on these trips. And we've got books, itineraries, and maps to back that up. The quilt went from, the thing I like about the quilt is wherever she went, she did when she still lived in Hillsboro. And wherever it went, from Hillsboro to the assisted living, to the memory care, to hospice, that quilt went with her. And just the amount of questions she got, just regarding that quilt, and everybody said, did she really go to all those places? Yes, she did. One of my favorite pictures is, and when I wrote this, I didn't know they were going to do that. It's in the yellow frame over there, that picture, and that is, that's because, when I say, when she's got her hat, turns out the white hat, she was on the Amazon River, okay, and that picture was taken, so it's always been kind of one of my favorites, a good smile on the Amazon River. So, one of their trips, they encountered a hurricane in Cancun. They were in a hotel without any power, the dresser blocking the doors so nobody can get in at night and everything, but they weren't easily deterred. The cruise company offered them another trip. Later they went back to Cancun. They weren't bothered by that at all. Ardeth was a loving and caring mother for all 3 girls. On the day of a field trip to New Salem, and if you went to Mowequa, that was the ultimate field trip to New Salem. That Denise showed up at school realized she missed the bus because I'm not sure if it was her clock or the clock the family had, the daylight savings time. So she didn't set the clock and didn't get there. She was pretty upset, so the school called her mom, and so Ardeth, left home and got the niece and went through Salem and then stayed the whole day there. So there was no boundary, too much they would, cross to do that. And Donna, as many of you know, lived in St. Thomas for several years, and Ardeth went to visit her, for a week or 10 days or something like that, and that was just a great trip, she always talked a lot about. And then there's Vida, didn't leave her with fine stretch of imagination. Vida, when Vida was a senior, before senior year, she became a foreign exchange student. She was in Finland for the summer, and then, I don't want to say Chris, okay, the girl she stayed with came and lived with them, for that year. And so, I guess they thought when Denise went to college, they still needed 3 girls. They couldn't function with 2. And so, but I will admit, I didn't see that coming, the foreign exchange student thing. That totally blindsided me, but it worked out great. And so I see a lot of so also another thing, people used to ask them, especially where James worked, why are you sending your girls to college? That was, we get that kind of question all the time. And I think, they just didn't understand it. But they wanted the best for their children. They encouraged them as education was one way to accomplish that. And I think it ended up well for a couple of teachers and a nurse with multiple degrees and designations. And I see a lot of the fight in the daughters that was passed along from Ardeth. We were fortunate to be close to her the last 6 years and involved in a lot of family activities. It would have been 8 years, but she fought us for 2 years. So, she's not that fight. She didn't want to come out first. So when she was still in Hillsborough, another example of her being a fighter, she fell in the garage and broke her hip. So she had to crawl through the kitchen, through a part of the dining room, around into the living room to get her phone when she did not want it. And to call somebody, and then they had to break the window, they had no way to get in. So, but she just never let those things deter her too much. But probably the real reason she agreed to move closer to us was the arrival of 2 great-grandchildren locally. And then as a bonus, our 2 older great-grandchildren moved to Morton and were part of her life for 3 years. So in addition to her love for family, she seemed to attract the love of others around her. When she was in assisted living, a lot of the care workers called her grandma, and enjoyed visiting with Ardeth, and Ardeth would come in and give them back rubs, and she'd come into the apartment. I'm sure they were probably supposed to be attending to other things or other people in the facility, but Ardeth seemed to attract them. So she had the same type of attraction, like in the memory care unit. One of her caregivers there was a young girl, and when she was in hospice 17 days, that girl came almost every day to see her. So she really had, a great attraction for people. The last year and a half, when she started experiencing more health issues, she was hospitalized 3 times, surgery, multiple trips to the doctor. And, if you remember these trips, usually took 2, if not 3 extra people, and she just didn't move too fast, and didn't want to leave her by herself too long, that kind of thing. But even through all that, she always had an uplifting attitude. She never really complained about being in pain, which is even the doctors would say, "Are you sure you're not in pain?" But she never complained about being in pain. And I must admit, when Denise and I would get a call sometime in the middle of the night or something about missing dentures or her hearing aids thrown in water or something in the trash or something like that, we often thought, what could happen next? What else could possibly happen? But she made it tolerable to navigate those situations because she was always so pleasant. It was hard to get upset with her. So we are thankful for the time she's able to spend with the grandchildren, especially the great-grandchildren. Charlotte was the first great-grandchild locally, and she was able to visit the hospital both when Charlotte and Harper were born. And she couldn't get a smile off her face. At the assisted living place, everyone knew Charlotte and Harper were Hollywood, and they received rock star treatment from everyone knowing their names and greeting them, and also making special milkshakes at the diner. So it's never easy seeing a loved one in a state of decline. As Denise and I went to see her each day for the 17 days she was in hospice, we were comforted by the fact that she was getting excellent care. We would talk to her. She couldn't talk back. But we'd like to think she heard us and knew how much all of her family enjoyed her life journey with us. And as we raise our families, we pray that part of her fighting spirit is embedded in our hearts and souls. When we would leave her apartment and look back, the thing I remember, look back at her sitting in her recliner, was a memory of a great smile and a twinkle in her eye. So rest in peace, Ardeth. And we're just going to play one song, just him, and then I'll say a little prayer for you. But even when, after she was technically in hospice care for just a few days, I think that's right, in the memory care unit, one of the girls said that she would go in there and sing with Ardeth. And a couple of songs she would sing, and one of them was How Great Thou Art. So we'll just listen to that.